I have to ask you about your writing process, and we could break it up on Grand Theft Auto. GTA 4 is when it really started ramping up. How much writing went into the Grand Theft Auto series? How many words are we talking about? I saw some thousands of pages.
I mean, when we printed out the scripts for GTA 4, it was about this high.
Yeah.
And GTA 5 was about that high. But that was including all the pedestrians who'd have pages and pages just to create the illusion of a living world, because you interact with each one of them. But even the main script for the main mission was thousands of pages long.
What was the writing process like on that to generate one page at a time?
Bit by bit by bit over several years. But you start with, once people had determined, oh, here's the world. We're doing one based on a version of New York, say GTA 4. And I was living in New York, had been living in New York for a few years. Wasn't sure if I was happy. Was going through a lot of personal dramas as usual. And that was why I was looking at some of GTA 4 again recently, and it's really dark. And I was like, oh, that's why. I was single and miserable, and I wasn't sure I wanted to stay in America. My life felt in a lot of flux. As a company, we'd had all that hot coffee drama, so constantly thought we might be shut down in the middle of making that. A lot of drama in the company. So it felt like, having had this run of success and relative personal stability from GTA 3, Vice City, San Andreas, suddenly 2005, 6, 7, early 7, life felt very unsure. And that kind of bled into it. But in terms of the process, it was trying to find an underbelly to New York and capture an immigrant experience that I'm not entirely sure how accurate that immigrant experience was in 2008 when the game came out, and then tell it story from a different angle as an immigrant, which I thought made it interesting. And then this sort of journey around these various New York characters. So I kind of spent probably a year traveling around with cops or meeting people on and off, and wandering around New York and driving around, and on and while just go up for the morning from the office. Normal stuff, but doing that through 2005, assembling little notes. Here's a funny character for this. Here's how, figuring out how the order we want to travel around the map in. Characters of this. What was an interesting take on the mob for that kind of time period? What was an interesting take on some Jamaican hoodlums for that kind of time period? And assembling lots of notes and more notes, and really, really, really running away from the work. Which is, I have to admit, it's part of my process, if there is any kind of process, which is not doing work, thinking about it, but not working. A lot of time, and then it all kind of pages and pages of notes, make more notes, no actual work, months and months of this. And then finally set myself a deadline, told all the other people on the senior people on the team, okay, I'll have a story draft to you Monday morning. I can't remember what it was, say February the 1st. And then the weekend before was in a cabin we had upstate, and just stayed up all night, knocking these notes into shape, assemble about probably a 30-page document. It's a story synopsis and a character synopsis for each of the major characters, and then hand that over, and that would get broken down with me and the designers. And I was always clear, I'm not a game designer, I'm a sort of creative director. With me, and it'd break that down into missions. And then that takes another year or so of that slowly assembling, and then begin. But the bulk of my work's then done for a bit, so I can relax and offer opinions on other people's work and be lazy for a bit, and then start to worry, because then I've got to start writing dialogue. And for GTA 4 in particular, it's like, we're going to try and write, our animation's going to be a lot better, our character models are going to start to look better, the world is going to look amazing. Therefore, we can support better, longer scenes. We can have more in-depth characters. But we've got to find a tone that works that with a game. So easy, no problem. And I start to worry. And also writing as a Serbian immigrant. And I was an immigrant, but I'm not Serbian. And trying to capture what on earth that would feel like. So I start to worry again, avoid work for as long as possible. And then just sit down and start hammering away at a keyboard again late at night. Hammering away at a keyboard and going, does that right? Is that? And once I get one speech, one turn of phrase that I would like for a character, then they suddenly come alive in my head. And so it's like writing with Niko, and he's awkward, he's out of town, but he's got more self-assurance in some way, not the American characters. And so once I kind of taught him through this, he's just stepped slightly back from their ridiculousness. And then he started to come to life. And then I would juxtapose him and his cousin, who had this much more Americanized energy. And that felt like it was a good double act. And then from there, it starts to come to life. But it's written in small chunks. For the motion, so then we motion capture small chunks, and then the other writers would write the mission dialogue for small chunks, and we'd slowly assemble the game, sort of 10, 15 missions at a time over the next year and a half.
Do you remember a few maybe lines that brought Niko to life?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was his incredulity when his cousin picks him up in an old car and he's not living this fancy American lifestyle, and his cousin's, which was a kind of comic moment. And his cousin's, and then they go to the cousin's flat, and the cousin also, even though he was a sort of a failure, was still upbeat. And then when he talked to the cousin and he talked about his wartime experiences and how harrowing they were, and I was like, can I make this work in a game? It's very different from stuff you normally see in games. Is it going to feel ridiculous? And I remember being very scared because I thought it might be too much. It might feel over the top. And I was like, I think, the game's so pretty. The artist's doing such an amazing job. The game's looking, I think we can get away with this. Let's try it. And then they motion capture it, animation came back. I was like, yeah, it kind of works. And I think that moment, those were both pretty early. Once we had those, you go, okay, we've now got comedy and tragedy in the game with this character. Now it's working.
You remember, during the war, we did some bad things, and bad things happened to us. War is where the young and stupid are tricked by the old and bitter into killing each other. I was very young and very angry. Maybe that is no excuse.
Yeah, he escaped. He's a veteran. He escaped the trauma of war to come to America to pursue the American dream, I suppose, which became for him this thing that drags him back into violence.
Yes. He can never escape his sort of violent past, or I don't know if he can never escape it. He never does escape it. Whether he's got agency or not is a whole other question. Of course he doesn't, because he's a character in a video game. But whether he ever could have escaped it in another way, who knows?
I think he's probably the greatest character for me created in the Grand Theft Auto series. What of all the characters you've written in Grand Theft Auto, would Niko be the best character you created?
I think he's the most innovative and the most morally defensible in some ways. He does a lot of stuff where he's fighting for right. He's the nicest person in some ways. Is he the best protagonist of a GTA game? I think he's the most innovative protagonist of a GTA game. Structurally, he might be too nice in some ways. He's also tough. Like, he just comes across as tough. I loved CJ in San Andreas. I thought Melee he's got just the way he spoke gave him such humanity. So I just loved, it wasn't the writing, it was the quality of the voice acting. It was just so strong for him. I think aspects of Michael, he was so understated, but he loved the character, but he brought so much humanity to this character who's so flawed, who is such a, he has no principles. He sells everyone out. We just kind of, I think Ned Luke did such an amazing job and didn't necessarily get as many plaudits as Stephen Ogg got for Trevor, who was also wonderful. But I think the Ned Luke character so anchors that game so much. So I like all of them in different ways, but I probably love Niko the most.